Hello, everyone. We're going to be hosting a Zoom meeting for the members of Homeschool Inspire, and we're going to record it for those who could not be here. And today we are welcoming Catherine Hamilton, who is a homeschool mother of 5, and she has also been a mentor since the beginning with Homeschool Inspire. So she has mentored many of our members and just has so much wisdom. So I'm really looking forward to sharing with you her talk. She's going to be discussing how to consider your gains at year end, which is a very encouraging exercise, and I hope many of you will try it. So here is Catherine Hamilton.
All right. Well, I thought we could maybe just go around, do a quick introduction, and if something that I thought could be a fun question is there something this spring that has surprised you or is delighting you just in general? It doesn't have to even relate to homeschool, but say your name and how many kids you homeschool, about their age range or grade range, and something delightful. And I can start because I had time to think about the question. So for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Catherine Hamilton. I have 5 children. The youngest is a toddler and the oldest is in 6th grade. But that's my range. And this spring, we are really enjoying the flowers, the wildflowers, especially the little teeny tiny ones that you might miss, and then as soon as you learn it and identify it, you start seeing them everywhere. And one of my daughters made a pretty little card, and she was just like drawing sketches of local wildflowers, and she had a dozen on there, and so it was just so special. And I was just thinking how that is a fun thing to be able to know and take with you in life, and I'm learning it in my 30s and they can learn it as children. Who would like to go next? Anybody want to share something?
Well, y'all know I'm retired homeschool in a sense because my youngest is now in college. However, I got to go to Scotland this month and spent time with my 4 grandchildren, 3 of whom are in homeschool. So that was so fun. And the thing that I think I enjoyed the most is how the children become very close, like their relationships to each other are so sweet. And the 2 older brothers know how to kind of help the 4-year-old if she kind of gets frustrated or can't do something, they can distract her out of it. And I really admired that kind of just the social closeness that I saw. So I thought that was really special.
Mm-hmm. Right, I'm Amy Rico. I have 4 kids. My oldest is 15 and my youngest is 9. I think I got that right this time. Let's see. Okay, so homeschool's been driving me nuts. It's been very chaotic. I don't really like my kids at the moment. I don't really like myself at the moment. So I've been doing a lot of gardening this week. So that's been my happy thing. I've been planting a lot of dahlias and weird bushes and things. So that's reality this week right now.
Great.
Yay, honesty, maybe.
Right. I think everyone can probably relate to that at various times over the course of the year.
I remember, Amy, you saying how you manipulate your school calendar so that you can take time off in the spring and work on gardening sometimes. And I just thought it's so true. Sometimes you have these beautiful days and everybody just wants to be outside.
The weather's been so great.
That was that's a great way to use the flexibility you have, and it's therapy too if you're having a hard time. So,
Joyce, I was curious how many grandchildren you have who homeschool their children, or how many children do you have who homeschool their children?
Well, we have 9 kids and only 2 have children, but both of them plan to homeschool. Well, one is homeschooling and the other has a new baby, but she's already taken many of my homeschool materials to get ready. Oh. She has 100 easy lessons ready for her 1-year-old.
May I please play?
Sorry,
Nicole, we're just going around and introducing ourselves, like name, number of kids, and age range. And then something that has surprised you this spring or is delighting you. It can be homeschool related or not. So just a quick introduction. Joy, do you want to go?
Oh, Joy Barisi?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Sorry.
So, my like fun thing that surprised me today was, so our second born, and we have 4, so age 10 to 4, and the 4-year-old just tags along right now. So it's not like formalized for her, but for our 8-year-old, he really loves steam engines, because Thomas the Train. And so, but it's like a really intense fascination. So yesterday we were reading, I was reading with Vienna, the oldest, and this was like not part of the lessons for the younger kids, but Miles happened to be in the room as I was reading the book. And it was this book called The Sciences, and it happened to be talking about water pressure and steam pressure. And then they talked about how steam engines work, and they had like a diagram of how it worked, and you could see all the little parts and everything. And it's hard for me to understand things like that. I have a hard time understanding diagrams, and I have a hard time understanding descriptions. So after it was over, I was like, I'm just going to look for a video about this. And so I found like a little video on how the water pressure makes the steam engines work. And then today, out of the blue, at the end of our Gale Day, our school day, Miles came over to me with a picture of a steam engine and all like a little diagram of how the steam goes through the fuel box. And he was like, "Mom, can you find the safety valve?" I just absolutely loved it for so many reasons, partly because of the diagram itself, partly also because he had worked so hard on spelling the words, and not that they were accurate, but he did that on his own. He was thinking through the blends, like for somewhere there was like an O boiler, and he had IO instead of OI, but I just was like, something is working. So it was just really fun for him to make that connection and to draw it out on his own. And it wasn't even his lesson, but, so.
That's wonderful. And that's the beauty, yeah, of being at home together.
Yeah, Nicole.
That's really cool.
All
Nicole,
right.
do you want to go?
Oh, sure. So my name's Nicole Budd, and I have a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old. She goes to preschool, but kind of does school with us during the week when she's not. We've had a lot of sickness. So we've had the norovirus, and then my youngest had a cold this whole week. So that kind of has thrown us off quite a bit. Like we started the year off with COVID. And so it's just been like, we'll get like 2 weeks going and then some kind of sickness comes. So I think that's something I'm really like frustrated with, is that like, we're not usually a very sick family. So I can't figure out why we keep getting sick. But I actually decided, I was doing Sunlight American history with my daughter, and we have switched gears with our curriculum every year because she's my oldest. So she's kind of my guinea pig for everything. And I decided, enough American history right now. We're just going to highlight points, and we're just going to read captions to pictures. And since we've kind of switched gears on how we're doing it, she's had more fun with it. And I just was like, we're not having fun. Like, we're just trying to like cram information in. And I'm like, for whose benefit? Like, what are we doing this for? Why am I, I was a former public school teacher. So I think sometimes I'm like, well, we have to get this done in the year. And so just kind of, this year's been just really eye-opening and letting them go at their own pace, finding their rhythm. Like if my son wants to go do 3 or 4 lessons of math, like that's fine, like go do that, and if my daughter only wants to do 2 pages that day, like it's fine. Like just taking breathers and taking the academic stressors off. Like my kids are they're above grade level on most things anyway. So I think I was putting unnecessary stress. Like if my oldest wants to go, she's talked about going back to public school for middle school. So I like stress out about that, but I really am like, any gaps she has, we could fill in. She may not even have any gaps. So just realizing that like, it'll be fine no matter what we do, as long as we're learning and being engaged has been like a big joy for the last like month, because everything was derailed with sickness. It's like every week I'd plan something and then that week would get ruined. So whether I wanted to or not, I've learned the lesson of like, it's gonna all be okay.
You know what, Nicole, I think everybody goes through that where they just learn that it's going to be okay. I think every homeschool mom goes through it. You've been initiated again, perhaps.
Joy, Eric, can you introduce yourself? Or if not, that's okay. Just, I know you're there.
Yes, hi.
Where
Let
you're
me
staying, and if there's something that's
I'll step
delighted,
outside for a minute.
something delighting or surprising you this spring.
delighting or surprising. Yeah, just we're just being we're doing what Nicole did. And just trying to be restful in our pursuit of, I don't know, a few things. We're more just really taking a slow down approach to life right now, because we're looking for a house and doing all this stuff that the rest of the world is doing, I guess. It seems like everybody's trying to buy a house. I know. It's just crazy. So yeah, we actually changed gears last week and decided to just pick a topic, and I just let each kid pick their own thing they wanted to study. And I just went onto the library website and checked out books on each of those things. And then they all sat there on, I think it was Tuesday, we had a day, and I just put all the books, like each stack for the kids, just here's your stack, here's your stack. And then I just gave them little Post-it notes to just write down some fun things that they learned as they were looking stuff up in the book about their different products. So this kind of goes back to last year. We did a little project similar with nature study. So I just figured, you know what, that's what I want to do. That's what I would prefer doing. I don't want to do any of the books I have planned. I want to do this other thing. So I just kind of scrapped it, and that's what we're doing. So that's just been really fun to feel like I had the freedom to do that. And kind of like what somebody else said, you know, sometimes we get stuck, or I get stuck on whatever my plan was. And sometimes I get bored with the content that I picked out. And since this is a baby year, I really just like plugged in someone else's plan anyway. And that has worked up until now, where I'm like, oh, I've just been kind of itchy. Just, oh, this is boring. That's what it is, boring. So I'm trying to just go with it and let the kids play outside when it's beautiful. And now we're on our research project. I'll let you know how that goes.
Nice. And now, Charmaine, are you there if you want to say something? If not, you don't have to. And sometimes I don't know when can't see someone if they can talk or not. But all right. So I'm just going to go ahead. The theme today was on looking back, and this is a quote that I have used many times with people. It says, most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a month. We overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade. It's by a man named Matthew Kelly in a book, The Long View. And I have found that idea so helpful in my homeschool, to think, you know, when you have that day and you feel like you had this plan, you have often a plan that's completely unattainable, and maybe it's defeating because you can't do it. But then often we can be really hard on ourselves for a day or maybe a week where everyone was sick and we didn't get anything done that we needed to do. But in the longer chunks of time, I found that it's amazing what you can accomplish. And I think, that idea of a school year, what your kids actually have learned over the course of a school year is huge. But if we don't, sometimes we just don't find the time to think about it or remember it, record it. And then to think of, 10 years, like in 10 years, how much character growth, all of these, and learning, and the books that our kids are reading. So in that vein, just wanted to talk about an idea of, I guess, maybe a routine for some kind of a regular reflection. I'm curious if anybody has something that they do, whether it's yearly, monthly. I don't know. Is there something that you do or have done in the past to look back and say, what it is that you feel like you've accomplished, or how people have grown? And I don't know, does anybody have anything that they regularly? I know I asked ahead. I have a couple of, I don't know what the right word is, but a couple people on the call who I know do some really cool things. And so I've asked them to come so that they can share their a little bit of what they do. But that's kind of the thought here, is to get some ideas. I can show you one thing I started doing. I started this it was one of those times in April where I was like, can we be done with school yet? And so I started writing down everything we did. And the warning is, if you do that, you might think, oh, we totally can be done. I can call it. So I just did mine in like a Word document form. I wanted to be able to send it to my husband. I probably could have sent it to grandparents too. I don't know if I did or not. Sometimes, there's different dynamics with grandparents, but you can think about who might be interested. And for me, this was like school as a whole. So it wasn't by the kid, but it was, and I just set it up like dividing by topic, like American history. And I did what we did together, talked about the time periods. And I tried to go back through and list every book we read aloud, and even the kids, every single book they read, every biography. And as I started going, I just realized like, oh, these kids, they've read so much, they've learned so much over the course of this year. And I find it such a valuable thing to have, because it's stuff like this that can help us keep going. When we're feeling a little discouraged, to know that the steady work, it's going somewhere, it makes a difference in their lives. So this is a, Word document type form. There's some of you Charlotte Mason fans will have heard the term a mother's diary. And I have a little journal. And Miss Mason was an educator in like late 1800s, early 1900s in England. And she wrote, "I would earnestly exhort all young mothers to keep a journal in which the gradual progress and unfolding of their children's minds may be noted down. Even if they have no general views in so doing, they will derive much benefit from it. Their ideas will become more collected, their plans more determined, and they will require a habit of thoroughly examining and endeavoring to understand whatever occurs to excite their attention." So I love that quote, because it talks about just how that process can be so good for us as mothers. So this is not for the state. I know in some states to homeschool, you have to, or it used to be, they had these portfolios they would put together of the kids' work, which was, kind of what this is. But you can also just do it for yourself, regardless of what your reporting needs to be, because that process of reflection can help us make better plans in the future, and think about things. I think the way she talked about doing it was having like a separate journal for each child and a regular routine of sitting down and writing everything they learned. If Joy Cherick is available, I know she does some of this mother's journaling. So I asked if she could briefly tell us what she does.
Hi, hold on, let me try to set my thing up correctly. Benjamin's joining me.
Wasn't Benjamin born like the day after an Inspire Zoom call or something? I feel like.
I think it was close, yeah. So what I do for my mother's journal is I write down probably every 3 months to 6 months, I'll just write down my schedule, like what my day looks like. And what that has done for me, it has helped as the seasons change for me to go, well, I used to do my walk in July at 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. And now it's December. What did I do last December? You know, so as the seasons change or as babies, like seasons with my kids change, I'm able to go, oh, when I had a 6-month-old, what did that look like? Hang on one second. There's a timer going off in my house. So that's one part that I do. And that's, like I said, probably every 3 to 6 months. And then, sorry.
Just look at the baby.
Yeah. And then the other thing I do is at the beginning of the school year, I'll write down almost like a paragraph for each kid, what my goal is for them. And then I'll just revisit those at the end of the school year. I was actually thinking about how it's a good practice with goals to like have them, you know, sticky note like in front of you all the time so that you can see them. But I'm not doing that. So that would be a good idea. And then the other thing that I do is it's kind of similar to the goals, but it's more a record where kind of along with and I'll probably do this like twice a year. I don't do this one as much, is I'll write each child's name down and then next to it, I'll just kind of write like what they're doing. Like I would write down Benjamin's not napping very well right now. And I can't get him to sleep and he's teething. And he's very delightful and fun and, you know, whatever. Or I might write down for my older students, I might say, you know, Reagan's really into writing right now. And she's writing voraciously as much as she can whenever she can get a free moment. She loves her friends, you know, so it's like, it's partly academic, but then it's also partly personality, like what is their demeanor like? Or if I'm having trouble with a child, you know, I might write, you know, of course, whenever I write something that's like, this is challenging, I try to remember to write like 2 things that are positive because it just does help us. But so that's been really fun because as my kids have gotten older, I can look back on that and see just a record of their little personalities forming and see, oh, that was like, that's still going on, you know, like that's just part of who they are. And it kind of has given me some freedom to not get frustrated when they're doing certain things. Hold on, he's really into my hair. Hold on. Get off my hair. Yeah, that hurts. Whoop. Sorry. I wish he'd just look at you guys. There, you look at everybody else. So that's been really good because then I'll notice, oh, well, there's a pattern here that this child has gotten into. And I remember when I helped them get out of that pattern the last time they fell into it. So my kids, it might be more like, I've got one kid that's maybe falls into some passivity where they just kind of need some diligence training. And then I've got another child who has been more just talking back more and not just be disrespectful just on a regular basis. And I go, oh, I remember how I solved that last time. Again, like mama boot camp kind of thing. And then you start to kind of, there is some conviction there too. It's like, oh, I really need to stay on top of that, you know, whatever it is. It's not just negative stuff either. It's the positive things that you can see in a child over time, and you can start to see how God made their little personalities. So that's been really fun. Just to even write down like their interests. I have a couple of children who are super interested in nature in a very particular way, always wanting to grab my phone and take pictures of a bird, the clouds, the sunset, whatever it is. So again, that would just be something else I would write down. Another child who's like really into cars and everything mechanical. So, it's interesting too to see if those interests, if those interests follow them through their lives, or if it's just seasonal. You just never know. So yeah, just those three things. So it's like a timeline, like our day in the life, where I just write like 6 a.m. wake up, 7 a.m. breakfast, or right now it's like 7 a.m. wake up, 8 or 9 a.m. breakfast. It just depends on, it's fun to see like, oh, at one point I was eating breakfast at 7 a.m. and I'm like, and I'm not doing that now. That's okay. And then the other thing was the goals that I have for academics for the year. Well, they're not always academics. Like with my younger ones, I will have like potty training, obedience, come when called, those kind of goals. And then I'll revisit those at the end of the school year. And then the last one was, what would we call that? Just like a personality paragraph, maybe.
Do you have separate books that you do that for kids, or do you just do it in one big one?
I do it all in one book. Yeah, it's just, I call it my mother's journal, and I just try to have good handwriting when I write it, if I can.
I love that reflects kind of the whole person idea of homeschooling, where we're looking at just more than just the academics and counting.
Well, and the lifestyle, right? With the day, it's like you've got more things than just school that need to happen in a day. Naps and eating and walks and time with dad. That was interesting too, to see in different seasons with my husband's work where we fit in times with dad, and it changed based on if he was working outside the home versus inside the home. So yeah. Ooh.
We think we're going to remember everything, and then
No.
forget so much. I learned that when I had my 5th baby after a break. It's like, I forgot a lot of these things. I had to call friends who had more recent kids and ask them questions.
Right. Yeah. You kind of don't forget. Yeah. And some of it too is I think about, I want this to be a resource for my children, either for daughters-in-law about their husbands, or my daughters about mothering. I just think I would like for them to have that family history to help them if it would be helpful. Like I've got different kids that are teething differently. One broke fevers, and this one just won't go to sleep, and others scream all the time. So, little things like that are just good to know. That's all I got.
My other little plant here was Joy Barisi, and she did something that's super fun with her family, and I thought just to share an idea of another way to record your homeschool life and family life. So Joy, will you describe your Gale newsletter?
Yes. So when we first started homeschooling during the pandemic, so we weren't seeing family at the time at all. And so there was good reason to have a written form of communication to kind of keep them up to date on what was going on in our lives. And also, I just tend to do better with things when they're more public. Like if I have some and fun, like I like to write. And so I knew I would probably stay on track more if I was going to be sharing with other people what we had done. And also, I tend to have battles in my head that don't really exist. So, like, I'll have arguments in my head with people about things when they haven't actually said anything. And I could just see the in-law discussions coming up about why we had chosen this route. And I just needed to have a way of heading off those battles. And so I just decided to write a newsletter to tell everyone what we were doing in our Gale Day. We call school Gale, Guided Adventures in Learning. And so for the first year, I did it every 6 weeks. So at the end of 6 weeks, I would sit down and I would go through like all the pictures that I had taken and just kind of cull, ones that I thought would be interesting. And then just write stories about some of the highlights, some of the things that we really enjoyed doing. So I don't necessarily talk about every subject that we did. It's just like, oh, I remember the kids really liked this, or maybe I'm like, actually, this one math lesson was amazing, and I am so excited to share how it went, and so I just choose certain subjects to highlight and then tell a story about them. And I try to include some of the kids' actual work. So for instance, and that was last year was every 6 weeks. This year we switched to every 12 weeks. And because that's like the end of our term, we have 12-week terms. So this year I can include portions of their exams in it. So if I ask a question on the exam, then I can include like part of their answer. And it just, at the beginning, I just sent it to grandparents. Now it goes to like 60 people, but it's mainly people who just love our kids, and it helps them have a way to engage with our kids. Like for instance, like our community group, like our church community group, it's really nice for them to know what our kids are learning, because it just gives them talking points when they see them. And it has been really fun to see the responses, because when we write these newsletters, people respond with their own experiences. And last time, the term that we finished, a few weeks ago, I sent out a newsletter, and we had studied Beethoven that term. And so I was telling a little bit about Beethoven and how much the kids just were like in awe of his hearing impairment, and how much like that impacted him in different ways, not just musically, but like in his relationships with people and all these sorts of things. One of the people who got the newsletter responded with pictures of himself outside of Beethoven's home and at Beethoven's gravesite, and like had all these, just awesome stories about how he also loved Beethoven and he also loved music and, all these things. And we've had neighbors get a lot more invested in our kids' education. Just, when they find a bird's nest, they'll, hey guys, come see the bird's nest, and share magazine articles and things that they know the kids are studying. And so I feel like it started as a way to just kind of help me stay on track and help me, like you're saying, just track things and remember things, but it became a way for my children to be able to engage more with others and for others to be able to engage with them. And so it's been a fun thing. And I wanted to mention, since Joy Cherrick mentioned goals, one thing that we started doing this year with the co-op is we have this like communications platform, and everybody has the opportunity to write a goal for each of their kids each month. So they post it for like everybody to see. And it's not, it could be academic, or it could be tying their shoes, or it could be whatever, speaking kindly to their brother and sister, but it has been really cool because everyone in the group then knows like each other's goals and can encourage their kids and high five them for, whatever it is that they're doing well. And one thing that I learned through the goal setting, is I read this book, Atomic Habits. You guys, you've heard of this book? And I loved how it talked about how to structure goals. And it said something about a lot of goals are easier to meet when you have a time and a place that you're going to work on them, like goals that are habit based, you know? So basically now on like the last day of the month or the first week of the month, we just sit down with our kids and talk to them about one goal they want to work on. And we attach it to a time on the calendar. So like for 10 minutes at 3:15, Gabriella's going to practice piano, or at 10 minutes at whatever time, Vienna is going to work on relationship developing strategies. You know, and so that's not necessarily recorded in a journal like you guys mentioned, and I love that idea and I should do that, but it is recorded like on like this platform. And so now I'm trying to think, how can I like bring that also to paper so that I can remember in the future what those goals were. So I like what Joy said about the goals. And anyway, okay, there you go.
That's great. I love your newsletter, and I love that you didn't even realize how it would enrich your homeschool and your relationships. That's really fun. I think there are a lot of grandparents and neighbors and who care and want to know about those things, and then they might be able to be a bigger part, and then we don't have to homeschool alone, which is really great. And one thing, sorry, one thing I just wanted to add in was when I record, I try to think through also to record any learning experiences that weren't planned and that would never fall under curriculum. So it's not just the, whether it's a field trip you went on that was really fun or some of these surprising things. I think that's one of the best things we can do. My child got really into X. Because sometimes if it's not in the plan of the curriculum, it gets forgotten, or we just we don't remember those things. And I think that mindset also can help encourage us to, when we start looking back and seeing how valuable those learning experiences are, it helps us looking forward to allow the kids the freedom to pursue. And I know that's something that Joyce really modeled in her family, of how in the afternoons their kids had different things that they were kind of doing on their own that wasn't, it's not the formal education we think of, but so if you're thinking back over a period of time or the year, don't just think of it during those hours you consider school hours. It could be on holidays, it could be on weekends. It could just be a hobby they picked up that is really cool. And, that was something that maybe it would be a fun way to end our discussion, is to think, can you think of something, one of your children, or just an example of something that was a really valuable learning experience that wasn't planned, or wouldn't fall under curriculum per se, that kind of arose. And it doesn't even have to be in the academic world. I mean, it could be relational things. We have a season right now with a neighbor with cancer. And this is a special season for our kids to learn what it looks like to support and care for and pray for, and oh, look at this flower, I want to take it to Miss Ann, or just that's something that I want to record, because I couldn't really plan that into our curriculum, but that is such a big part of developing them as just human beings. So anybody else have anything interesting or fun things that you remember? I'm sure, Joyce, there's so many with your kids that were didn't start as being school and ended up being big parts of your lives. But anybody want to share something like that?
I thought it was neat. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Joy mentioned the writing of that her daughter is really into writing, and she and my daughter and some friends have all been on Google. They have their books and they're writing and commenting on each other's books, and I get I get my daughter's emails, so there'll just be these long conversations there. It's really fun. They're like writing novels. And they all started that on their own, which is very fun. And that's something that, will be a treasured memory of their childhood was, the book they wrote.
How do you do that? How do you support that? How do you enable it? Like, what's this? Is it like a Google Doc?
They're just using Google Documents so that it can be a share. Like, it started with my daughters and their neighbors were writing a book together, basically turning something they played into a book. And so they all wanted to be able to write and then comment on each other's writing. And then Joy's daughter wrote a book that kind of connects. And so she comments on theirs and they sometimes are commenting. So they're working as editors. And it's been a really fun thing. It's opened up some great conversations about, technology and etiquette and communication and, okay, the silly exclamation points for 10 comments, or, you need to watch your words because this was hurtful to someone else, how you said it. It's been a huge learning experience, but it's also just a really fun thing.
The other thing that has been interesting about this project with these girls is how when we write, we're writing similar to what Joy was talking about with her newsletter. Like, we're writing to communicate and to tell someone something. And Reagan's told me I wouldn't have written so many chapters. She's on like chapter 17 or something, if my friends weren't saying, you must write more. I want to read more of what's happening in your book. So that, I think, just affirms something I had already learned on my own, which is we write to communicate something. Like, we want to be telling people others something. So, in school, it's easy for there not to really be a back and forth communication. You're writing for a grade, and it's kind of a dead end piece. So I'm just trying to think of other ways that kids can, or my kids can write. So at least they have a dialogue with someone, whether it's me or the grandma or one another. So this, has of course opened up a whole new world. A lot of it, like what Catherine said, none of it's been planned. But I do just want to encourage that. I think that writing project, Catherine, is part of why I decided to just scrap everything and have my kids pick a topic. And we're working on another podcast series, because it's writing for someone, right? You're doing it to communicate. So that's all I had to say.
Well, and sometimes these records can be writing for yourself to remember, or writing for your kids, or they could even be writing for themselves. Like, I just think, I have to find some way to publish somehow this book so that in 20 years they can read it again, or, read it, their kids can read it. And just because it's, there's so many memories tied up in that. And I do the same thing with this stuff that I write down for school. I know I'm going to look back and not really totally remember what we did or how we did it. And so having those records is part of preserving, we, as moms, we do a lot of taking pictures too. Like, part of our job is this, like, documenting, preserving, recording of their childhood and their life. And it's
so it's marking time, right? We're saying this happened. We were here. We looked at that flower. We saw that plant. We learned that lesson. That's good.
Amy, is there anything that comes to your mind with your kids that has surprised you, that was something learned that you never planned as part of your homeschool? But
honestly, I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, it's one of those days. We understand.
Sorry.
Maybe gardening when you
That's
look.
what.
Yes. This kind of combines what Joy and Joy were saying. But when our kids were little, we used to develop film in the old days, but we would take the doubles and let the kids pick a picture they liked from our family, whatever we were doing, and then they got to write about it. And sometimes it was kind of like a diary entry, like this is what we did. But sometimes they would take off and it would be like their imagination of what was happening at the time. Like if people were dressed up, you know, they might make up a story. But those little books are so sweet. And I was thinking you can still do them digitally. And at the time, I had some kids who didn't write yet. So I would paste the picture and they would dictate to me. So I would just write down what they said. But anyway, however it's done, I think you could actually start getting your kids involved in writing the newsletter, the family newsletter even. You know, it could be their insights or they could be interviewed for it, which
Oh,
is kind of fun. Yeah.
I just realized my one of my kids, okay, you guys are like very naturally wholesome people. I like superheroes and the Marvel stories really make me happy. So anyway, my daughter started writing a story about if she were Hawkeye's daughter. Now, understand, she is my girliest. She gets dirt under her fingernails and go, oh, I need to clean my fingernails. She's like, she likes to get her fingernails dirty, but she likes being a princess more. Anyway, so her writing this story about her being this awesome Hawkeye. Okay, Hawkeye, he's the archer guy in Marvel superheroes. Anyway, he's really cool. So her making up this story, and it's very detailed and funny, about being this super awesome girl archer superhero was kind of cool, fun. And that was a fun surprise. So there.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a great thing to document.
And it's good to remember I'm a little backwards in the technology. I'm not on the cutting edge, but I'm sure there's so many ways. You know, Joy's done the podcast with her kids, which is fun. There's other things out there, you know, whether it's videos. I have because of just time with all the kids, some of my kids sometimes will give narrations of assignments that will be recorded. They do it to an old phone we have. And then I save my favorite ones. And like my 8-year-old son does his exams mostly that way because he can talk so much more than he can write. And I'll save them. Sometimes I share them, but like I can capture his voice on it. Especially if, you know, and sometimes trying to get little videos. There's other ways. I'm sure you all are so creative that things, you know, maybe even getting your kids involved and asking them like, you know, how they'd want to preserve stuff that they've learned could come up because there's just a lot out there. We're getting close to our time and I wanted to, Joyce was going to close us off and talk about something really fun for our families. But yeah, thanks for having this discussion and sharing your ideas. And when Joyce posted on Facebook, if you watch the recording and have any things that you do or want to share, like that would be great. Start the conversation because there's really cool ideas that we get from each other.